episode is sponsored by Raise Tech, end-to-end IT solutions for your business growth.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome on the Agile Couch. Today we have Giedrius together with me. Hi, Giedrius.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Simas.
Hello. Giedrius is a senior technology leader, senior product manager, technical product manager, program manager, so many buzzwords you can name. But I know Giedrius from my previous experience working with him, and observed that he has many different perspectives on the way how the organization should work, how the team should work, and mostly he used to be focused, to my knowledge, as what I remember, on a bigger scale deliveries, like either be it projects, business deliveries, technical deliveries, or sometimes someone calls it programs.
Yep, a buzzword. What does that mean?
So indeed, and today we met to discuss what is Agile Program Management.
Right, yeah.
So maybe to start about that, Agile Program Management might be that some people heard about it, some maybe didn't, but if someone would ask you from the street, what is Agile Program Management, what would you tell?
Yeah, that's a good question. So probably I would say, like, in simple language, that's a complex project or complex set of multiple projects, like in simple language, to achieve the business goals. So that's very simple. Probably everybody understands what the project is, but it's a bit more complex and looking also into the strategic perspective. So not only one kind of small piece, but like looking into the overall picture from engineering, from the commercial side, business side, and so on. So that's more like strategic overview of deliverable. So yeah, that's probably in simple language what program management is. Why Agile? So yeah, that's also, I Googled a bit, like, is there any kind of courses on Agile program management? Because Agile scaled, we have many Agile teams, but complexity is growing, and using Scrum, Kanban, or other Agile techniques, it's quite complicated, maybe, and not so easy to manage complexity or complex programs. So that's why probably Agile Program Management, because like program management and project management is not a new discipline. It's like, I don't know, 50 years or more. So it was used in construction, later on in engineering. So yeah, waterfall model. So that's probably everybody's aware about. But we will get into the details. What's the differences between waterfall and Agile, and then probably digging into some examples from my experience. So what was working well, what was not so working. So we'll dig in a bit into details.
Okay. So you mentioned Agile Program Management. How I assume it, so correct me if I'm wrong, because you have more experience from this field, I treat it as there is an organization and we have the teams that are, let's say, cross-functional. They're capable of delivering end-to-end some functionality. Of course, teams are has some kind of boundaries, either by the product bounds it, or there is a features, capabilities. So different segments of teams, and across these teams, probably we need to deliver something from the bigger perspective. And you mentioned strategy.
Yeah.
And that's where the Agile Program Management comes into the game. Is that correctly understood?
That's a bit of right, but that's not so easy, let's say. I mean, do you need program management in your Agile company? If it's small to medium, probably not. Like, that's a bit of also, if you look into the Spotify model, into other kind of also Agile literature. So that's a bit of anti-pattern. We try to avoid big, complex projects because we
not do Agile Program Management.
But like, stay with me. I will tell you when do you need that.
Sure.
So as I said, it's a bit of anti-pattern because you need to slice. You need to put, for example, like not a big monolith slice it into smaller services, and you have autonomous team. So it means your team can do one service, one business outcome they can drive on their own. And as an organization, Agile organization, you try to avoid those interdependencies. But it's not always easy to do that, especially with some projects which involves not only engineering, but, for example, legal teams, finance teams. So your engineering teams works in Agile. They use Scrum. They interact a lot with each other, but
Yep.
when you come to the legal teams, when you come to finances, they usually do not use Agile or Scrum. So how to connect all these different departments into one direction? So we need to achieve some kind of outcomes, and how to achieve with all these different teams. So for example, like a bit of more specific examples. So in the previous companies who were driving multi-cloud project, as it was called, project or program. Usually I mix those two, and people also are mixing. So, and the objective was to expand to the new markets, so grow the market share, for example, by 10%. So that's quite clear. I mean, you need to achieve that direction. And the company at that time for past 10 years was using AWS. So it was public cloud, AWS. They were using this cloud. And in new markets, we had strict data residency requirements. So it means your data should stay, for example, in particular country. Let's take as an example, Indonesia. So Indonesia, and the challenge is your product runs on AWS. In Indonesia, you don't have AWS. So what do? So you think about other ways or creative ways how to achieve that outcome. So in our particular case, other public clouds were available. So for example, Google Cloud, Microsoft Cloud, Azure, and Oracle Cloud. So that's 3 new clouds which were
that could help to achieve that outcome.
Correct.
If there is some missing piece and you've been using.
Yeah, correct. So you kind of need to achieve new markets, or to kind of expand to the new markets, and that was the only way we could expand to those new markets. And that was a challenge. Like, that was a bit of complex, and I can tell you also in numbers. So who was involved in that huge program? So at least 5 infrastructure teams who built the cloud agnostic platform. So that's like five infrastructure teams. Later on, adoption. So it means all the application teams or product teams needs to adopt it. So that's again from 5 to 10 application teams involved. Furthermore, so that's only engineering part, but later on you need to, as it was banking sector, so you need to go through audits like ISO, SOC 2. You need to deal with legal things, and also marketing, sales. So yeah, there is a lot of different teams involved into that. And for example, I was coordinating and leading that, not only one myself, but I was giving a direction with the help of agile coaches, product managers. So, but I was probably leading that towards the success.
And leading that. Okay, so you've described an example of a bigger scale program that involves, as you said, multiple teams that are from engineering, then from other supportive areas such as sales, probably legal, and other administrative parts probably. So everyone needs to work out together, seeing one goal, one direction, and trying to achieve it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a program.
That one sample of a programs. Probably just a few more. I will not go into details. Just that was an example from my experience. But when you would also need a program, so for example, identity and access management, usually it's called Okta. So like access management is used by multiple teams, multiple systems. So that's where you also might need a program management or program manager to coordinate all the work, because again, that's quite complex exercise. Service-to-service communication, service mesh. So that's also one of the samples. And there could be probably more samples. And as I said, not in all the cases you need program management.
It's more like side effect that you need it probably if you need to go cross-cutting multiple teams and layers through the organization.
Correct.
And somehow need to have that overview if we're going to achieve that that outcome that is anticipated. Okay.
Correct.
So taking then program management, as you said, from your experience, what were the ways that you've been using that worked to actually coordinate that many people? I assume if you said 5 to 10 teams, then other people involved, I don't know, it might be hundreds of people working or even more through
Yeah.
that program.
Yeah.
So how do they work together? How you help them to work together?
Yeah, how to avoid the chaos. So yeah, usually, for example, what companies are using? They're using OKRs, and that's quite a good tool, let's say, to align the whole company towards one goal. But when you come to the initiative level, so you need to get to some details, to some specifics, and that's where you might need, for example, a program to set the boundaries and to set clear milestones. Because if there would be no dependencies, OKRs probably quite well working, and because the direction is clear, key results also clear, so everybody working towards that goal and they know the direction. But when there is interdependencies, so that's where complexity is, because somebody needs to be first, second, third, and so on. So more like, as it's called, waterfall model.
Gradual approach.
Yeah, gradual approach. So you start to see. So yeah, that's the key. Like why you need to program, because there is dependencies, because there is sequence, let's say, in your tasks. So that's where you need a tool, let's say visualization. You need to visualize this work. So because it could last, let's take an example, it will last for a year. Your program will last for a year. You have 10 teams, and you need to coordinate your work. So what tools we used in past? So my early career, when I was like a project manager, so definitely it's waterfall model, and you use Gantt chart. So you have all visualized.
Setting visuals, the sequence, and
all the sequence. Yeah, so that's a classic. But in Agile world, that's a bit of you get resistance, and there are a lot of also the downsides of that. So I will tell probably what are the minuses of that later on. But in previous company, we used Miro board. So for example, that's, let's call it a project board.
So for those that don't know, Miro is a virtual whiteboard that can be accessed by anyone, anywhere.
Correct. Let's take an example like a whiteboard.
Yeah.
You have a whiteboard, and you have a swim lanes. So as a swim lanes, we used either initiatives, either teams. So you have, for example, different initiatives or teams. You have time boundaries, let's say weeks or months, how you slice it. And we have one usually common goal towards which direction you are going. So that's a visualization. So what we were doing, with the help also of Agile coaches, we introduced that tool, and how we're doing. So we usually were doing monthly planning. So for example, at the beginning of the month, together with team leads, usually, or some staff engineer. So it means team lead, staff engineer from each team. So we are not involving all 100 people. We're just involving.
That would be crazy, probably.
I will tell you one sample where we did that as well. So yeah, we took only senior people into these plannings. One goal. So we work on the epic level, let's say items. We put it on the board. We plan it, and later on we go into the dependency mapping. So that's where the visualization and whiteboard actually gives a lot of benefits, because dependency management, I haven't seen properly managed in any company. So whiteboard and having these boxes is actually a really good tool to visualize it, how items are dependent on each other. And when you map the dependencies, you can identify, as it's called in project management, critical path. So you see
who needs to do which things first in order to make sure everything works out.
Correct. Yeah. In a classic program management, so that would be probably a program manager who does all that exercise. He understands the dependencies and so on. In Agile world, so that's a team. You as a program manager helping with a tool set, helping with the knowledge, helping with visualization. And later on, you see the team starts to collaborate each other, and we start kind of interacting. Oh, we are dependent on you. Can you prioritize this? And vice versa.
So actually, you need to help the teams to see these dependencies, if they do have, so that they could actually start talking with each other.
Correct.
It's not like the purpose for you as a leader of that whole big program to go and talk with everybody. You want them to start working together. And
Correct,
that's usually the tricky part.
That's why we have Agile at the beginning of the topic, because
Self-empowered teams. That's what we
self-empowered
want to
teams.
keep, probably.
Yeah. Because you always try to balance between two extremes, like autonomous teams when we totally on their own, and control. So control, as I mentioned, like why we are trying to avoid control, because we want to visualize and for them to be self-sufficient. So it means team can work on their own, but then there is a big complexity. You need to see it. So you need to see all the...
Even the team needs to see, probably. It's not that you need to see, but they need to see
Yes.
how they are interrelated
Yes.
with each other.
So that's the key information, which usually is lacking on the team level. So when we are interacting with different teams, different departments, so that's where the value of program manager is, to bring that visibility. Later on, it's not always like teams are going to each other. So you need to be a bridge between business, engineering, bridge between legal, engineering, and so on. So you as a program manager also building these bridges. And engineering teams, usually we can talk with each other. Sometimes you need to help. So that's monthly planning, that's visualization, dependency mapping. And later on, they go into their own team sprints.
And they do plan the work separately.
They work individually. You as a program manager no longer, let's say, work on the micro level. You work on the macro level. And each week we are reviewing the status updates. Is there any dependencies, any challenges which needs to be discussed and prioritized? And later on, after a month, we're doing retro and another cycle. So that's more like sprint of 1 month. So I don't know. I haven't worked a lot with scaled agile or agile at scale. So maybe it's a bit of similar, but but we did that exercise and it worked very well, I would say. And we successfully managed to finish a project a bit of off time, so it took longer, but at least everybody understood what needs to be done and in a timely manner.
Okay, wow. So there's it was a scaling basically mechanism, and if looking from that perspective, it was probably similar, as you said, to other scaling frameworks. As I've heard, you've been involved into plannings, then it was synchronization, some kind of meetings, retrospectives. And was there anything else that you've been, apart from dependency management and all the visualization that was understood, the key thing?
Yeah, a bit of also, let's say, in parallel, we're also doing reports, or let's say STIRCO it's called, so on the senior management level, where you report the status to the senior management. So that's more like alignment session, not only status report, but alignment session. And also that's where you get senior management from the other than engineering departments. So we called it virtual team, probably other calls, maybe it's squad. I don't know, like it depends how you call it, but that's like legal, marketing, audit teams, maybe procurement. And that's where we're meeting at least once in 2 weeks. And some strategic decisions were made.
Aligning on the strategy with the senior leadership.
Yeah, for example, like huge commitments to the cloud providers, marketing campaign, launching a new country, again, saying go and start selling to one another country. So that's where all these decisions were made.
All right, so many useful information, interesting. I do wonder what's not working that well, actually, as everything looks like shiny and bright. But let's give a small break before we continue.
Okay.
So after the break, it would be nice to check on what is not that shiny and that bright. I mean, what are the difficulties, challenges with Agile Program Management?
It's actually a good question, because when you have like such a big complexity, so there are a lot of challenges in that sense. Yeah, probably let's start maybe as I saw also some of your podcasts. It's called sales-driven organization. So, so for example, in that sample which I was sharing, so we had quite a big challenge with that sales-driven organization challenge. So I joined the project maybe somewhere at the middle of a project or program, and many things were already, let's say, some deadlines, some commitments were given to the customers, and that was already solved. So I mean, you have already contracts, they're quite huge, there are huge commitments and so on. The technology is not in place. So when I joined the program, so that was more not a technical question, but more like clear communication to all the stakeholders. So like to show the transparent progress of your program. So that was lacking because there was no single threaded owner. So it means lack of ownership. So has somebody committed? Probably not, or maybe yes. Maybe engineers committed, because when I went also to one of the first calls with customers or cloud providers, so deadlines and some internal information was shared with customers and even cloud providers. So some confidential information. So that was a bit of funny, but at the same time I understood, okay, so there were no single threaded owner.
So no one was owning, so to say, the bigger delivery, although there were smaller pieces that the teams were owning. But,
correct.
Okay, so Agile Program Manager or Program Management, does it help them to?
Is it Agile? Is it Program Management? Is it Project Management? It's probably where it helps, it's single threaded owner. So it means it doesn't mean it should be like a program manager. It could be, I don't know, engineering director, engineering manager, but that's the one who is owning that. I mean, somebody is driving, leading that, and he's responsible for overall delivery. He can represent the program. He can communicate the deadlines, go to the, let's say, stakeholder meetings, maybe with the customers and so on. So usually, and that's a role, that's not a person. So ideally, that's a program manager. If you don't have it, so that could be at least somebody. If there is no one, then there is a chaos. So like sales are going to the customers, engineers are going to the customers, everybody is going to the customers and sharing something. It's not bad when kind of engineers are joining calls with customers, but when it's a big program, there are, for example, 1 year timeline, so it's hard to.
No one might have the full picture as well to understand where to go. So Agile Program Management not necessarily might help to solve it, or not necessarily helps to solve it if it's not being used properly from the beginning. What I heard, as you said, you joined somewhere in the middle of the journey, and then it was already the situation that's supposed to be handled somehow.
Yeah, and where it helps, so as a program management, where it helps, you see the bigger picture. Because, for example, engineer sees, we have a product ready, but that's only engineering part. He doesn't understand that there is, for example, security part, where you need to go through the security, all the checks and so on. Later on, there is audit, there is legal things. There are other things which, again, will take maybe, I don't know, half a year. So like you have technology you can share with your customer, but that's where you have a lot of things to do apart from engineering, and that is not visible to engineers, and they don't understand that. They don't have visibility, and they can say to the customers, "Yeah, we have product, go and use it," but they don't realize the bigger picture. So that's where program management benefit also comes in.
Okay, but apart from that, I'm just curious. So end-to-end picture, lacking of end-to-end picture as well. Not always program management or Agile Program Management might help to resolve it from the beginning. Of course, it needs time, and someone needs to get that understanding. How does it help strategy and execution? Because I mean, there is obviously some kind of strategy that each organization has, and what we usually tend to see within the smaller areas, teams, there's an execution part being done. But how to ensure that we have that strategy aligned with execution, and if program management plays any kind of role within it?
Yeah, it's a good point. If you have a strategy, so that's where you should start.
That's the starting point.
Yeah, because sometimes, in many cases, there is no strategy. I mean, there are some requirements, some smaller pieces, and they not always fit into the bigger picture. I mean, that's one customer asks this, another this. sales can be this and so on. And there are many different requirements which team is trying to deliver, and that's not necessarily fits into the strategy. So there are different models how teams are working or how organizations are working. So at first you need a strategy. So somebody like CTO or CEO needs to kind of draw a strategy to communicate that, and later on you need to cascade to your teams. And later on you see like, does all these requirements or like requests from a customers aligns to the strategy, or maybe it's going into another direction. So for example, our strategy is to expand in Europe, and all the customer requests are coming from, I don't know,
Asia,
for example. And that's against the strategy. So maybe we will change, we will not be delivering something which is specific to Asia, we'll focus into Europe. And that's the strategy helps. Otherwise, yeah, you have, I don't know how to call it. It's like when everybody tries to pull the blanket. So like,
into their side.
Yeah. And your teams are stretched. I mean, they're trying to fulfill all the requirements, but that's very hard. And you don't have enough capacity in your teams to deliver all the requirements. So yeah, that's where strategy helps. And that's the program management, agile program management also helps. So to deliver the strategy, because usually all these programs should come from strategy. So like strategy, later on you split it into maybe department strategies, OKRs, and from OKRs you have some kind of bigger initiatives which you can call programs, and that's where programs comes. It could be vice versa when it comes from bottom up. Yeah, bottom up. So yeah, there could be multiple use cases, but at least it should align to the strategy. Otherwise, it's a bit of kind of
misalignment, miscommunication, what I hear.
Yeah, it's for example probably from that aligned teams and autonomous. So like autonomous and alignment. So we're autonomous, everybody works on their own,
but we're working towards different directions.
We are working into all the different directions, and yeah, I saw samples of that. So ideally, where everybody is trying to be, so like it's aligned and autonomous. So that's kind of nirvana. But yeah, that's not so easy to achieve because yeah, a lot of alignment needs to be done on all the levels, and in some cases program management helps. In other cases, yeah, you have other frameworks like OKRs, but at least the strategy and the direction should be clear for everyone, and that's where program management helps to share that with across, to align it across different teams and departments. Because one also, for example, I was also thinking a bit, so we can have, for example, product manager or engineering manager or engineering director, but he's in his own, let's say, department or domain. But when you have cross domain initiative or cross department program, that's where program manager helps. So he is not biased to one department or another. He sees the full picture and he drives that direction, and not towards, I don't know, analytics or towards engineers or towards, I don't know, other teams.
Sales, yeah.
Yeah, or sales. So he has his own agenda, his own goals, and that's aligned between different teams, different departments.
It sounds like my assumption now, from what I've heard and from the understanding that I have, that communication is one of the most important things overall within this perspective. I mean, we all know communication helps, and it helps to bring transparency, alignment, clarity. But once having the broader picture perspective, someone, and if it's the agile program management being used, then if communication is not as good as it could be, then we might make more harm than benefit.
Yes, communication is a key, and as you mentioned, there are some anti-patterns even with program management, or like when you strictly follow, for example, you plan it once, you have a big program, let's say, I mean, it's big complexity, and you just, let's say you did a planning or execution or kickoff only once, and later on you just go with that. So for example, for a year, for two, you're just executing. But many things are changing.
People are changing.
Yeah, people are changing, teams are changing, even the goals could change, even the direction in those years could change. As we provided an example, maybe this year we're focusing into Europe, next year that's expanded to Asia, and your program might change a bit. So what is important to do these iterations, even in the big programs. Sometimes, yeah, maybe it's kind of, I don't know, like identity access management Okta project. So maybe you don't need to kind of change it. That's only execution. You just need to execute across the organization, and that's it. That's straightforward, and you don't need to iterate too much. But feedback loops, I think it's important, and then have this at least once in a month. It's really beneficial, and I can take you all to provide you also an example. For example, when we are running that program where I was providing an example, so and we missed something. So, for example, we delivered and we were like missing pieces, and what we did, we did kind of that review cycle. So we got the feedback. Okay, customers are complaining, these things are missing. Okay, we missed something in the implementation phase. So we did, let's call it internal audit or checklist, because there were like 5 or 8 different teams delivering that, and somebody missed one step. So we reviewed what was missing, fill in that gap, and iterated.
So
Yeah.
how these, you mentioned that iterations are important, and that's absolutely one of the key elements of agility overall, to have iterations and deliver increments.
Yeah.
How these iterations look within program management?
Yeah, so I previously mentioned that sample with like a whiteboard,
Yeah.
where you have monthly planning. So let's say iteration in, at least from my experience, what was iteration in my programs previous. So that was 1 month iteration. So that's, I don't know, Scrum of Scrum. So like
Yeah, bigger scale of what teams
bigger
do.
scale, yeah, what teams are doing. So once in a month, we plan on an epic level, we execute, we do a retro, we execute another month. So that's cross-team alignment, at least once in a month. That's what I call iteration in program management. Usually in bigger organization, that's once in a quarter. So they do quarterly plannings. But that's more about OKRs, so objectives and key results. So that's not always about programs or initiatives. So with programs initiatives, at least I was doing a bit differently, once in a month, because program is a bit longer, let's say it's half a year, and in that sense, yeah, it's a bit longer scale.
So you want to iterate through the commitments and through the progress to understand what's the situation and where we need to navigate it to one or another side.
Yeah.
Sorry. Then I do wonder, from your personal experience, maybe just to share a bit, what would you say could be, or what were your biggest failures within this setup? Like what it is to avoid?
Yeah, it's a good question. What to avoid? So one of also kind of let's call it things to improve. You expect that things will happen. So you kind of communicate the goal, you did the planning, and later on it goes to the teams, and you think things will happen. Like magic will happen. But that's not always happening. I mean, with mature teams, when we have enough capacity, yeah, that's happening. But in many cases, you need to go deeper and you need to understand the actual situation in the team. So we had multiple occasions where teams were struggling to deliver, and at first, yeah, you see it's lagging. So it means they are late. And I was lucky enough in that role, because I had two roles, like a program manager, also product manager, in a sense. So I had influence also on the team backlogs. So what I did, what was improvement in that program, we went together with the teams to prioritize together. So it means we all agreed on the department and even organization level. That's a key project right now to deliver. So that's, let's say, priority number one. And what I was like trying to ensure, but in team backlogs, that's like it's get priority. That was one improvement, but still, it was not always easy to deliver. And later on, we got visibility. Why is it so? Because some teams were overwhelmed with operational work or with other things.
Other activities that are not necessarily
other
planned.
activities, correct. And that's where it was useful to understand, okay, now we are overwhelmed, so we should not expect maybe, for example, audit is ongoing. And we haven't considered that when we were doing the planning. We missed that part. So, and that team will not be able to deliver anything, for example, for a month, because they are fully focused into that activity. They are fully aligned to an audit activities, and you should not expect. So that's the bigger picture helps. Like, okay, I got into details, they're on audit, we don't expect anything from them, and we plan accordingly all the other activities, because maybe some teams are dependent on them and waiting, just sitting. So you are planning. So getting visibility from the teams, influencing priorities, and priorities could be influenced on different levels. Either that's aligned on the, for example, organizational level. So it means across organization, you agree
that's our priority.
Yeah, that's our priority. That's where we're working. And that was main struggle. And that's where I was struggling a lot in all the organizations. So if it's not a priority, then you are just kind of pushing that, and you have a lot of resistance. So, and that's resistance is a bit of, I don't know, artificial or how to call it, if it's not aligned with an organization. When it's aligned, when it comes from the top down, everybody understands the priority, no resistance, everybody goes smoothly.
So how to work with that resistance? Because indeed, probably within the most organizations, just simply, each team has its own goal to achieve.
Yeah.
And of course, we want the teams to be aligned.
Yeah.
And then Agile Program Management helps the teams to align. But as you said, there might be resistance because we need to do something else. And that's our struggle. That's internal technical debt that we need to work with. How to work with that resistance that it would allow to get everyone in one place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think like, I don't know if anybody already resolves that, even in the best organizations, because it's always a struggle. You have a bucket, let's say, of 5 different items, like operational, security, some kind of BAU or like technical debt. When it comes product and programs, and some innovations, for example, like 5 different buckets, and then how to prioritize all of them. Like, and that's where the struggle comes to the usually team and product manager, if we have a product owner, or like engineering manager, depends on the setup of a team. And it depends.
It depends. There's probably no single one answer.
No single one answer, because it also depends. Every sprint is different. Every month is different. And there might be different strategies. For example, in some organizations, we decided, let's spend half a year only on security. And that's where you put everything else like aside. You focus on security. Half a year, you deliver some improvement, you move on. In other organizations, I saw already multiple times, and that's probably bad samples. When you have major incident, somebody breaks completely, I don't know, you are down for a day or something like that. And that's where operations getting priority. And I don't know, for a month or so, you're improving operations, you're improving reliability, you focus on that, and everything else is put aside. So ideally, you should plan your all these buckets, but you don't need to have a crashes, so you don't need to have breaches, security breaches, and at the same time be able to deliver. A classic way, I think it's 60-40, it's called. So like 40 for all these improvements, and then 60 for the project work. That's ideal word. Usually I saw the opposite. So you spend 40-30% on some strategic initiatives,
And the
and the
remaining
remaining goes to
firefighting.
on-call, firefighting, incidents, technical debt, and things like that.
Yeah, and indeed, that's where probably all things together, all things together come in one place. Agile program management. From what I've heard already, it's all about iteration. It's all about active planning, communication, transparency, and I mean, what you said, that situation changes constantly. Unplanned things, some audits, incidents, and then bigger organizations has even more things that are unplannable.
Yeah.
And then probably is not visible at this moment of time. But once constantly iterating for things, it helps you to actually adjust through it and still have the full picture.
Yes.
So that's what I'm taking away from this. That
Correct.
still
correct.
need to be adaptive, but someone needs to have the broader perspective rather than just be adaptive and, as you said, not aligned, just going into different directions.
Yeah, and that's the main difference from a classic program or project management where you try to control. You plant once and you try to control. I mean, it may be in construction that works well because that's repetitive.
Yeah.
In a software engineering, that's a bit of a harder exercise, and that's why you need a lot of agility
And
to
different
adjust.
tools.
Yeah, and different tools to adjust to all these changes, because things are changing very, very constantly, and you need to be flexible and agile.
Thank you, Giedrius, so much for your insights around broader perspective and organizational alignment. That sounded for me like how we are aligning organization on bigger deliveries, and that's where Agile program management might help. But as we said at the beginning, not everybody needs it.
Yeah.
And you need to understand firstly if you really need it, because otherwise it might be just an extra overhead that you don't want to have.
Correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Nice
you,
chat.
Simas. Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.